So thanks everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining. Appreciate your time. What we're going to discuss today is a product that we've collaborated with TAPCO with for a very long time. We've been TAPCO partners for over 10 years, and we've had a great relationship selling a wide variety of products. And today we're going to focus on a technology that has caught a lot of attention the last couple of years, and that is wrong way detection and warning systems. And so we've, if you do the next slide, Alex. And so with me today is Alex Perry with TAPCO, and I'll pass it over to him in a moment to introduce himself. But if you don't know me, my name is Michael McGuire. I'm the president of Bermuda Digital. And yeah, I'll pass it to Alex, and then maybe I'll just touch briefly on why we're having this webinar now, some of the recent events in the news, and then we'll get into the bulk of the presentation. But Alex, thanks for joining, and please go ahead.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. Yeah, as Michael mentioned, I'm with TAPCO, Traffic and Parking Control Company. We are a Milwaukee, Wisconsin-based organization supporting traffic needs globally. So we work very closely with Michael and his team to facilitate needs in Canada. A little bit about today's agenda. Just talked about our Michael and I as our presenters for today. We're going to be digging into a little bit of the impact of wrong way driving, what we've seen in the news, and some of the trends and history of how these systems have come about. Then we're talking a little bit of an overview of some available technology, working through the options that are available to us in terms of specifically detecting wrong way drivers, and then the alerts that those wrong way drivers would see on the roadway. Kind of working through some of the progression as to how those systems are built up from those individual separate pieces, working through modular design aspects and making sure that it's well understood. We have a variety of systems that are available to us that make sure that we're completely satisfying the needs of a particular client. We also have some exciting announcements to bring to light with some strategic partnerships that TAPCO has undertaken. Allow us some keen abilities to alert right way traffic of wrong way drivers and make the systems usable and actionable with TAPCO's BlinkLink software. And then a little bit more overview of how these systems work and perform to give some evidence to what we've been able to do thus far. So a little bit on TAPCO for those of you that may not be intimately familiar with us. Again, we're a Milwaukee-based organization located in Wisconsin and supporting the needs of the DOT nationwide in the United States, and with our partners around everyone in Canada also has afforded the benefit of working with us in our expertise. We've been around longer than the United States Department of Transportation. We were formed in 1967, and we manufacture these solutions. So we take a lot of input from our clients in terms of what these solutions, really anything in our portfolio, ought to be. And most of what we've been developing over the years has started with the collection of problem statements from our clients, understanding specifically things that they're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and making that into a repeatable, serviceable, and easy to own and operate meaningful solution on the roadway. Wrong way driving systems is just like that, where we've fielded requests for trying to address certain issues, and then the evolution of the product line happened with just the refining of what that looked like and making it something that was applicable more to all.
Yeah, a little bit on Bermuda. So most of you would be familiar with us. We are a Canada-wide distributor and manufacturer and integrator of ITS solutions. We are, like I said, long-term partners with TAPCO and the exclusive supplier of their technology Canada-wide. And we are a full-service shop, so we can sell you product, but we can also help design systems, work through detailed project management, and even operations maintenance and ongoing support. So full service shop. We are now part of Bermuda Canada and Bermuda Global more widely. We used to be known as Stinson ITS, and we went through a rebranding in September last year, and we're now Bermuda Digital to kind of align with our parent company. But that's us in a nutshell. And then I think the next slide, Alex, will jump into some of the recent stories, if I'm correct. Yeah, so I'm sure you guys have heard about these. When I started Googling recent stories. There's actually a lot more than I realized. I just think it doesn't really hit the news in a big way as much as some of them do. So if you, I'm sure most of you are familiar, and somewhat the impetus for this webinar was that big wrong-way event that occurred in Toronto on the 401 in April. And that had to do with, I think, a jewelry heist and robbers running away from police, ended up in a fatal collision of two grandparents and a young child. And so that triggered us to talk a bit about wrong way and get some awareness back up that this is still happening. And you know, it happened on the 407 last week. I just saw a video on my phone this morning. I don't know when it happened, but it seems to be coming up more and more. And so we want to kind of provide some exposure on kind of what options are available within this space to start trying to introduce some prevention and proactive safety measures. Next slide, please. And then this one, I'm going to hand over to you, Alex, and you can jump into it.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. TAPCO recognizes nationwide in Canada or United States respectively, but more of a global concern that there is more drivers on the roadway and there isn't exponentially more roadway. A lot of that means that we're compressing the real estate of what we have in some very dense metro areas, and we're dealing with drivers of all varied walks of life. So more drivers are confused, more drivers are inebriated, more drivers may even be negligent, and they were trying to alert those drivers of their specific errors and let them know that they are going the wrong way, potentially even letting an agency know that the events are occurring. Wrong way driving incidents, they're not necessarily the most common on the roadway. That's much is understood, but they are the most fatal accidents that occur. And even over the last couple of years, data beyond what's shown in the chart on the screen here, we see that there are more and more fatalities. And what's been sort of a keen understanding that's directly related to investigating these fatalities, as soon as an agency starts going through some analysis, looking at these incidents and start quantifying the amount of activity that they have in a particular off-ramp or in a particular area, there's a lot we don't know until we start putting it under the microscope. We understand that there's a lot of near misses that we may not be aware of until we start monitoring some of that stuff. And how many times are we going to be complacent with having a near miss on the roadway before we have to realize that there's a lot of opportunity that could be another one of these immensely fatal accidents. So TAPCO looks at that issue, we take it to heart, and we try to make it so that our partners, our clients, those that have to deal with these types of events when and if they do happen, that they're offered all the afforded opportunities to mitigate them. They're offered the opportunities to be able to respond to them with actionable information. We're trying to make sure that everyone is well prepared to be able to deal with this issue. A little history on our wrong way detection systems and how they came about. TAPCO considers ourselves the first to innovate wrong way detection systems in the industry. We were requested with some of our DOT partners to investigate ways to count right way, wrong way traffic and try to look at some ways to do some data collection. That's sort of the precipice of where this came from. And when we have that data collected, the next logical step is to make it meaningful and to do something. To have a bunch of information about the number of wrong way drivers going through off ramps, that's one thing, but it's our due diligence then to say, well, how do we stop this? How do we do something next? To that point, we've been working with technology over the years. We played around with just about everything from induction loops, radar, thermal. We've used LiDAR sensors. We've used some level of just about every type of available technology and really understood then as a result of that what a detection sensor needs to be if that system is meant to detect something, detect the presence of a wrong way driver. You know, what are the key attributes that are going to make that system successful in doing so? Or what's the Venn diagram of picking one sensor over another? What do they do commonly? What do they do distinctively different? And understanding whether or not that is something that's acceptable to our clients. We aren't a one-size-fits-all type of outfit. We do have the ability to right-size solutions and can offer the strategic guidance to say, while we have scalable options, we have different solutions in our portfolio, we want to make sure that the value of each individual option is understood and that what you get is in line with the expectations that you have. At that point, we have worked very closely at scrutinizing some of the detection that's available out there, and recently have announced that we've partnered with Bosch to use video as a sensor with artificial intelligence, advanced object recognition, and to be able to present that as the premier detection method with our systems. If those systems are going to be sensor driven, where the flashing indicators facing the driver will be triggered from a sensor, Bosch has a wonderful tool that we've been able to adopt in our technology to do just that, to make sure that these systems work very well and without a hitch. On the higher end of what we do, when we start talking about systems that produce specifically actionable information and alerts that are something that an agency can respond to and possibly use as the jumping off point to intercept a wrong way driver or alert right way traffic, our system is comprised of multiple areas of detection, where we first alert the driver that they have made an error, they've gone the wrong way. We would have an area defined on the ramp that would flash all the signs and the indicators to that driver so that they are specifically aware that they are entering a wrong way, do not enter type corridor. And then there's a proverbial point of no return on the ramp, where at that point, if the driver hasn't self-corrected from seeing the signs and seeing the warning devices, that we need to be very keenly aware that they're still progressing, going the wrong way. And then we sound the alarms. We make sure everyone that need to be aware of that driver's presence is aware. So we have a multiple zone type of technology that we're trying to monitor specific areas in space, trying to make each one as generally precise and accurate as possible, using the best tools in the industry that can do so. Those tools do go even into the available warning signs and the alerts. I'll touch on those a little bit more in a minute, but there's a variety of offerings that are available to us, and the system, while it's not one size fits all, it has a lot of common properties that when we do the application analysis, we can take this modular system and apply it to fit the specific needs of an agency and a specific area in space, being cognizant of things like ramp geometry, response time, and response protocol that might be needed for wrong way driving, and provide the system in a layout and configuration that's going to operate well to meet all those needs. A little bit more on detection and some of the highlights of what we have with our recent partnership with Bosch. Prior detection that we've played around with and we've implemented in many systems, inductive loops, radar, thermal is just the most common examples. Works very, very well for certain applications, but has notable exceptions, notable things that we have agencies have to consider in deployment. Our partnership with Bosch has allowed us to be much more flexible in terms of laying out detection along the roadway. We're using tools that have object recognition to be able to clearly track and identify objects in real time, making our detection that much more accurate and minimizing a lot of what we've considered to be false positives related to weather and elements like that. Bosch uses a exceptionally low light sensor. It's a camera that can see through most atmospheric conditions without any obstacle, using the algorithms associated to the object recognition of the sensor and the infrared properties of the camera to really overcome the obstacles that otherwise have harnessed what video detection can do. It's exceptionally capable of seeing in low light, so near pitch black, the video image from the sensor still sees very, very well, and the sensor is much more robust in terms of laying out systems so that we can meet the unique needs of ramp geometry without having to do anything that would harness or would minimize the effectiveness of the solution, meaning that there's no one particular layout or one particular type of ramp geometry that's going to be better or worse for a TAPCO system. We can seriously and sincerely take care of them all. I like this video that I have here. It shows, before I play it, you can see the independent boxes calling out the detection and the object recognition associated with all the vehicles on the roadway. We see the breadcrumb trail laid out for those vehicles, and we see that they're being tracked and independently identified. When playing the video here, this sensor is up high on an ITS pole and shaking in the wind. It allows the object recognition capabilities of the sensor allow for us to identify vehicles without having to worry about the frame of the camera or that camera's independent movement altering our detection. Typical typical detection with video equipment like this has an element of a static zone and it's overlaid over some level of optical image, whether that be a thermal-based image or something else, or just a typical HD camera image. And if the background image that camera sees, that camera's point of view starts shifting in the wind or starts oscillating due to roadway vibrations, sometimes the pixels move through the zones that we're monitoring in such a way that it produces a false trigger. The camera sees movement even though it itself is moving, and that is significantly minimized when using tools like what Bosch has available to us. This allows us to be more flexible in terms of what we mount to, reduces some of the infrastructure cost of putting these systems out there. We're much more forgiving with the pole setup, so that as long as the equipment is satisfactorily mounted and structurally sound, our sensor isn't going to require a significant amount of additional rigidity or additional accommodations to be able to be stabilized and perform well. We're able to work with something that's going to be easier to deploy, easier to own and maintain, and more readily available rather than overtly robust infrastructure. It's worth noting that not all wrong-way detection systems need be ones that have detection elements to them. The minimum viable systems in a lot of cases is just more conspicuous signs that a driver sees and can identify very clearly that there is a corridor that is a wrong way or do not enter type of roadway. To that point, TAPCO has got a suite of warning options. These options can be paired with detection and thus be independently activated when a wrong-way driver is present on a ramp. So meaning a sensor sees somebody, that sign starts flashing. When we start doing systems in that respect, we have this novelty effect of something is happening on the roadway that wasn't happening before that driver was present, and we play into the human psychology of, well, now we have something that we can leverage, that novelty effect of people looking around going, well, what's going on, what's happening, that stop, look, and listen, hopefully cover the brakes sort of situation. Capitalizing on that helps save lives, and hopefully that pause from that driver creates a little bit more awareness to their situation and gets them to self-correct. We can do that with pretty low-cost sensors. We can play around with the option of having signs flash independently without any particular type of detection and putting them laid out in a way that is going to be strategic and low cost to be able to provide some level of accommodation and remediation at all off-ramps. One of our preferred minimum viable treatments for wrong-way systems would be deployment of what TAPCO calls our legend-based sign. This is an internally illuminated sign that we've produced. It's a unique design in that the sign legend or text itself is illuminated with a bank of LEDs that sit behind the sign space. So effectively the substrate has got perforations with LEDs that can cast light through those perforations. And then over the top of that sign blank, there is a diamond grade translucent sheeting that allows for that bank of LEDs behind the sign to cast light through. This is a compliant design with the METCD. It's available in solar and AC options. We can play around with the solar autonomy and try to meet the specific needs of a particular agency. TAPCO considers ourselves to be experts of solar sizing worldwide, and certainly leverage our partners in Canada to help make sure we're making proper assessments to give systems that are going to be viable and solar sized appropriately for their application. What's unique about
a little bit, Alex. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but in Canada, there's always been a bit of a hot button issue around LED embedded signs. Like if you see in that picture in the distance, you can see a sign that has perimeter LEDs, which is a blinker sign in TAPCO's language. And we've always had kind of 50-50 interest in that. Some people feel that it's non-compliant with the MUTCD Canada regulations because it breaks the sign face, and it's supposed to be a uniform sign face, the entire size and shape of the front face of a sign. And so it's been a bit of a hot button the last couple of years of who believes it's legal, who believes it's not. But this new Legend Biz kind of overcomes all those kind of concerns around legality. So this is definitively, and we've kind of heard this from everyone now, that it's a uniform sign face. It just enhances through rear illumination. And so I see this Legend Biz concept being a lot stronger candidate for adoption in Canada, more so than the blinker sign. Whereas I know it's quite prolific in the US, the blinker sign. I think this the Legend Biz is the best fit for the Canadian market.
Appreciate that, Michael. You're absolutely right. One of the things I really like about the Legend Biz sign too, to kind of add, is if you look at the sign in the distance and the image to the right here, the sign text is a bit washed out. It's difficult to see that that says wrong way in the sign text. We see a red flashing sign by all rights, and a driver may respond differently, especially confused, inebriated, otherwise just disorientated, with a red flashing sign if they think it might be a stop sign or a wrong way sign. This one, for instance. We want people to be very clear about what they're seeing on the roadway, have a very conspicuous warning sign out there, and the internal illumination of the sign doesn't break the sign face, as you mentioned. It just enhances what's otherwise perfectly compliant MUTCD design, so that drivers can read the sign in low light conditions without any obstacle. This sign legend is meant to be steady on during low light conditions as driven from a photo cell. So when ambient light drops below the prescribed threshold, sign will light up. It does not flash. It is a steady on for those low light hours, and make sure that drivers can see the sign without having to have headlights on, ambient street lighting that would otherwise bounce off the retroreflective surface, or frankly have their headlights engaged towards the sign. The sign itself has a 135-degree viewing angle, and it makes it very easy for us to see the sign from an angular or perpendicular offset before we orientate ourselves the wrong way. Kind of reinforcing some of that before or after of a treatment for an off-ramp in the downtown Milwaukee area where TAPCO is more or less headquarters. The image to the left is before we have any Legend Biz signs present on an off-ramp, and it's even with these retroreflective signs, these static signs that are there, and the headlights are on from this vehicle where we're sitting, it's really hard to have the headlights bounce off that prismatic sheeting in such a way that they're going to see it from a near 90-degree bend from 180-degree offset. The additional legend illumination that we get with a Legend Biz sign allows for a driver to see that sign in their peripheral, very clearly read the legend of the sign because it's a distinctively MUTCD compliant design. It's easily recognizable, it's highly conspicuous, and they don't have to turn their car that way to be able to determine that that is a do not enter wrong way type corridor. Most of what's done in wrong way driving treatments is predicated on the fact that when we're detecting and we're trying to turn these drivers around, they have already committed to an error to some degree and have started to go the wrong way. Conspicuous signs increase the legibility of these signs. It's one of the few things that we can do that very clearly offer us the ability to minimize the number of events. We're very distinctively reducing the number of drivers that would go the wrong way by making sure that they are aware before they even make the maneuver. Again, kind of to Michael's point about the technology here and what we have, the not breaking the sign's face, it's not changing anything in which the sign is designed to illustrate. This is the nighttime daytime comparison for the sign. Because it is a diamond gray translucent retroreflective sheeting, it just is overlaid with on top of the sign blank with perforations and LEDs behind it. In daytime conditions, this sign is completely indistinguishable from a static sign that you would otherwise see on the roadway. The drivers need not be concerned that this sign has any type of LED enhancements. During nighttime conditions, these signs have the capability of being internally illuminated and have that very clear and legible message displayed. We can also position these signs to have those perimeter LEDs if we need to have an additional activated component of these signs, something that might be sensor driven or something along those lines. But it's very easy for a driver to see these signs in daylight conditions, understand the legend, and then also be able to do that in nighttime conditions. It's also one of the few pieces of technology that's genuinely available out there where the failover state, if the electronics were to ever be disabled, is a METCD compliant static sign without reservation. It doesn't have any true off kind of capabilities to it. Even in nighttime conditions, if the sign was not to be illuminated, it would operate the same as any other retroreflected sign. Something for us to have some assuredness of. There's always a treatment out there that's going to be viable in some respects, and our aim is to have the sign be as clear and conspicuous as possible as a result of all that. When TAPCO announced that we're looking into these types of technologies, we're trying to enhance the legibility of some signage that's available in the market. We did some studies. We did some pretty decent reviews of some particular off-ramps in the Metro Milwaukee area, southeast region of Wisconsin. We had locations that were pretty rough with wrong-way drivers, where we had a pretty steady amount of vehicles that were going the wrong way, and those locations were already outfitted with a TAPCO detection system. So we've been able to collect before and after data showing the effectiveness of just turning on the legend for these signs. So we had a significant reduction in wrong-way driving as a result of the deployment of these signs. We had significant periods of time where these signs curtailed all wrong-way events from even occurring on the roadway. That's what's huge, is that when we first deployed these signs, there was an element of the system isn't detecting anybody anymore. Let's go out and make sure everything is operational, and we've had to do our due diligence just to validate that everything is operational and was truly the effect of the signs, making the corridor which the system was deployed on much clearer to drivers that they should not go the wrong way, should not enter that corridor. We've seen that again and again in multiple states where the effectiveness of the sign is understood, and we have multiple state agencies in the United States that are standardized on the use of these signs for wrong-way driving treatments across their entire jurisdiction. So if there's interest or questions regarding references for these signs, we have quite a few of them, and they're overwhelmingly a very positive tool in mitigating wrong-way driving. Another excellent partnership that TAPCO was able to announce recently was our partnership with Haas Alert. Haas is a third party that we have the ability to integrate into and use with our cloud-based software. When our driver detection system accurately detects that there is a wrong-way driver present, and then that alert is transmitted to TAPCO's BlinkLink cloud software, the next step in the equation that can be made available is the integration into Haas Alert Safety Cloud. With that, we're able to alert right-way traffic specifically on their connected devices, their cell phones, or within Stellantis vehicles with their current vehicle manufacturer integration, and display messages to those right-way drivers that they are coming up to a possible wrong-way driving incident or a wrong-way driver. It's a geo-fenced area in which we would be able to transmit that alert, looking for specific drivers in specific space that would be those that are going to come up to that wrong-way driver. And it's one of those things that in a near pseudo connected vehicle application allows us to penetrate into those cars in a way that doesn't have a heavy lift or a heavy need from the traveling public to be able to adopt the alerts and to be able to receive that information. Connected vehicle applications are certainly another way to do something similar to this, but those require the use of roadside units and onboard units respectively in vehicles. There's infrastructure within the municipality that needs to be considered. There's also drivers that need to be adopting that technology and need to see that it's valuable and accessible to them. With the current population of drivers that are using Stellantis vehicles and using traveling apps, mapping apps like Waze, we have a lot more population that we can communicate safety messages to, and we're excited to be able to have that option to be able to overcome what has otherwise been a question about how many DMS signs do we put on the roadway, things like that, to accurately share that drivers may be coming up to a safety hazard. And again, our capability goes well and beyond hardware with the partnership with Haas and with the other options that we have, and be able to detect drivers and make the information meaningful to municipalities. TAPCO utilizes our cloud-based software, BlinkLink. BlinkLink is a tool that allows for us to connect all systems that we have available in our intelligent warning systems portfolio. The options are most evident when we start talking about the use case of wrong way driving mitigation. Use BlinkLink to gather information about the system's performance. We can remotely access the system in a cloud-based form via URL. So you just go to the BlinkLink website and you can very clearly see how that system is performing, look into alerts, be able to see images that may be captured of wrong way driving events. If cameras are outfitted with that system, we have the ability to download video information to be able to see more clearly and distinctively what's going on along the roadway, provide better detail in after incident review. The idea is that the system has the capabilities to be able to accurately alert those that need to be notified of wrong way driving events, but also gather information to be able to help minimize those events from occurring in the future after incident review, and that can be facilitated. And lastly, it has the ability to be a maintenance-minded information center, providing system health information should there ever be loss of contact to a particular device or a system in general. The system has the ability to alert those that need to be notified of specific times that they should be going out and trying to maintain the system, bringing it online should there ever be a fault, and really maximizing that system uptime. These are critical pieces of infrastructure that need to be operational, and we need to know that they're operational. So system health check-ins from software like this is instrumental in knowing that we have a safe and successful roadway for the traveling public. So again, with the wrong way detection use case, TAPCO's BlinkLink software works with the hardware and with the needs of the end user to accurately detect wrong way driving on the roadway, gather that detection information, and produce it within an alert within the BlinkLink software. This alert can be accompanied with photos, can be sent as a text message, email notification, a pop-up within the software, and even the opportunity to produce automated phone calls. We do that with some law enforcement agencies where it's the policy of that agency to be able to dispatch themselves off of a phone call rather than something that they have to read, especially while driving in their vehicle. And we were able to then further facilitate the quick response time necessary to be able to intercept and possibly save lives here in wrong way driving events. TMC operators receive this information, and we're able to take that one step further and put displayed messages on DMS signs if that's applicable. Integration is available to Haas Alert, again, as a mechanism to warn right-way drivers, dispatching authorities, and more than anything, to be able to accurately qualify the magnitude or the event in real time, what is going on, to be able to accurately say that this is a wrong way driver and what they are doing. Are they correcting? Are they going the wrong way? IDing things like the color, possible make model of that vehicle. We have cameras out there that are put into a strategic position so that we can see as much information about the site as possible, where they're coming, where they're going, and identifying all of the facets of what that driver is doing that are going to be important to us. If there's a diverging off-ramp, for instance, where that driver may have gone north or south, we need to be able to identify that. If the driver goes up to the top of the ramp towards the freeway and possibly pulls the last minute U-turn and corrects himself going with right-way traffic up at the freeway, that is, again, worth noting. We want to be able to use our resources as much as possible and as accurately as possible to understand how we can try to stop these events from occurring and address them as they occur in real time. BlinkLink is a very keen tool to be able to respond to events rather than accidents. I have some quick video of some of the wrong way driving turnarounds that have occurred with our system. This is a highlight reel of installations that we've had where you can see that this particular system is using rectangular flashing beacons. We have systems out there with all sorts of different types of warning devices that when a driver is detected, they see very clearly that they have started to enter a corridor in which they shouldn't be entering, and the turnaround information is then provided back to the DOT or to the agency so that they can respond to the event or address the issue. There's multiple cameras usually when we start talking about these camera-based options that allow for us to see where that driver came from and possibly where they're going. What we're looking at here is most often the final outgoing image of that driver as they would be progressing up towards the freeway system. But we can also position cameras in a way so we can see where that driver originated from, gathering the pre-buffer of those images and understanding point of origin for wrong-way driving in a way that we think is going to aid into preventing events from happening in the future. Within the BlinkBlink software, you'll see images like this come through. Those were what we were just looking at, were video images of wrong-way events to expedite the alerts coming through. The software by default sends images with the alert, so we will receive a number of images and play them in a slideshow type form and be able to see very clearly what that driver is doing. The JPEG files transmit much faster than video, but video is available as an option to be able to very clearly understand what's going on with these events. Individual system information is then identified. We get the ability to take these events, make them create after incident review tools, and catalog this information for future diagnostics. That's all I have, Michael. Is that on you for our pop quiz?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, it wasn't unmuted there. So yeah, so this is a typical kind of favorite of our webinars where we kind of look back at some kind of key bits of information from the webinar. And my apologies, normally I mention this at the beginning of a webinar, so people are trying to look for those typical numbers and things that you might be quizzed on later. So what we're gonna have to do, and Alex is gonna click this in a moment and it'll pop up a question. And what you have to do is answer the question. It's gonna be an ABCD based question, and place your answer in the questions box in the sidebar menu bar of GoToWebinar. So just pop your answer in there, one of the four, and then Samantha's going to be watching the answers there, and whoever answers the correct one first will win a little prize bundle from us here, and we'll connect with you after the webinar and get your shipping details and send this up to you. So Alex, if you can shoot with the question and then maybe one more click to get the answers. Once, actually, let me read it. How long has TAPCO been leading the wrong-way alert systems industry? 5, 10, 15, or 20 years? And then we'll just hang here and wait for a winner. Sam will announce that, and then we'll show you the answer. So again, just post that in the questions box in the side menu bar.
We did have the correct answer almost immediately. It was C, 15 years. And Michael was the first person to answer. So I will contact you afterwards to get your shipping details. Congratulations.
Great, thanks guys. And so I think that's the end of the webinar here. We're just going to open it up to broad questions now. So again, I should have mentioned this earlier to go ahead and just flip questions into the box as we go through the content. But if that hasn't happened, please take your time and answer any questions that you'd like here. So just post your questions into that same box where you're just putting the full answers. And Alex and I'd be happy to address any clarifications you'd like. I don't know if we have a stash of, it looks like we do have some. If Sam, you want to go through those?
We do have a question. Someone asked, how does the cloud-based portion react in low cell signal rural areas?
Excellent question. We have the ability to work with different cell carriers to figure out what's going to be the best cell carrier for that particular area. We have some that are certainly our preferred options, and we can do a lot in the world of just reviewing those locations virtually using providers' cell coverage maps that are pretty accurate to understand how viable a cell signal is at a particular site. So more than one option exists for us in most cases, and we can play around with whichever one's going to be the best for cellular strength. Other options do exist with us being able to tie into fiber connections and Ethernet connections and that to be able to leverage a agency's network and get egress access to the cloud via that network. In remote areas that may or may not be viable for us all the same, but it's worth noting that our connection isn't strictly cellular in nature. We can play around with what's going to be most available to us and viable to us at that particular location.
Yeah, just to add on to that, we've been dealing with this challenge for many years, and coverage has gotten dramatically better, so it doesn't come up nearly as much. But we do also have the option, which we've done many times, is changing the size of the cellular antenna that we use on site. So by moving to a directional and high gain antenna, we can achieve a much longer range connection. So that's typically our go-to solution when we're in the middle of nowhere, and even up in the Northwest Territories and really remote areas, we've been able to achieve signal many kilometers outside defined coverage areas. So it's always something you have to consider, but there are lots of options to try to get around that. And we're even seeing a lot of movement on low Earth orbit communications. I haven't gotten into it myself yet, but there's a number of solutions and services coming out in the next year or so. So very anxious to see what's coming with that, because that might solve all these problems very easily.
Looks like the only question so far.
Perfect. That means you did a really good job, Alex.
Thank you, Michael.
The one thing I'm going to just, I want to just kind of reiterate, I know, so one thing we should have mentioned is that we have deployed one of these full confirmation style wrong way systems with the MTO back in 2017 in the Port Hope area. And that's been running ever since. And unfortunately, there was kind of not as many wrong way events once a bunch of signage and pavement marking changes were made. So it was only like twice a year that we would see a wrong way event, but we're able to achieve the same kind of remote notification and video and images from the site. But often some of the feedback we get from the MTO from other provinces and 407 and whatnot is the kind of the challenge of finding budget to deploy these systems, because once you start adding sensors and cameras and cloud and modems, there's obviously a price tag that comes along with that. So I just want to emphasize that this is a very scalable solution that can start, and we recommend starting with the basics of just very conspicuous, legible signage at the off ramps, like the blinker, the legend vis signs that we showed earlier, to more rudimentary, Doppler radar-based activation options, and then with the ability to enhance the critical on ramps and trouble areas with the full solution, where you see frequent events and want to have kind of the ability to dynamically and on demand respond to events, such as dispatching police or updating VMS messaging to warn right driving traffic. So it's very modular solution, very scalable, to allow you kind of an easy entry point, as well as the sophistication and ability to support more targeted and higher end detection and tracking solutions. So I just don't want people to be intimidated. If you're a small city, you think you can't afford, big sensor system like this, there are extremely effective methods that have a very low barrier to entry. And so just keep that in mind. And if anyone's interested, I think, Alex, you can go to the next slide. My email and phone number are there, and so feel free to reach out to me, and we will follow up with all of our contact details, both mine and Alex. And if you guys have any questions, we'd be happy to follow up via email directly with you.
Absolutely, and I'd like to add too, Michael, that it's very common for TAPCO to work with our partners wherever they are in the world and determine what options would best benefit them. In a non-committal way, we're happy to review locations and kind of lay out some of that portfolio of options with the ability to understand the bill of materials directly related to what's going to get the agency what they want, and then work through what the pricing for some of those options need to be. So we talk about the scalability, we talk about those types of things. We can do some assessments on site and virtual to help us understand what you get with different types of systems and how that would look like, what the functionality is going to be. We can provide design detail then that allows for that to be constructible. So if there's layout renderings that are necessary, if there is drawings that are necessary, we have a very large library of resources that can often be inundating that we can pull together in a project specific way that's going to make it meaningful and help articulate what the system should do, could do for you.
No, absolutely. Thanks for adding that, Alex. It's very true. I can certainly vouch for TAPCO's ability to provide very professional proposals and kind of site assessments. So yeah, absolutely. If you have any ideas of sites that might qualify, please reach out and we'd be happy to do an assessment, provide you some options on what might be the best fit for that spot. But I think with that, we'll close it down. Again, follow-up questions very welcome after the fact. But thank you, Alex, for taking the time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.